Hi, I'm Matt Shepard.
And I'm Chad Shepard.
Coming up on this edition of Shep, Shower, and Shave, why baseball is in such a good place right now. Shep, Shower, and Shave is brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Folks, you want the best HVAC studies you can get? Perfecting hands-on programs? Northwestern Tech is the place to go. Over the last 38 years, they provide flexible scheduling. It allows you to keep your job while you train for an actual career. HVAC companies need experts. Northwestern Tech is the HVAC school to get you trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months. Call them today, 248-358-4006, or go to their website, northwesterntech.edu. We're also brought to you by Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak. Over 40 HD TVs. They've got cold beer, outstanding food. The kitchen is open until 2 a.m. They've got a brand new patio out there. Check them out on Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak. And our website design is brought to you by Nate Noth. You can follow him on the web at Nate at goldwellstudios.com. You can see his work on Instagram and on Facebook as well. I'm excited about the All-Star game. Usually I'm not, okay? Usually what happens is I get a bunch of snot-nosed kids, I think, at the Major League level, and I think, you have not arrived yet. But there's an influx of young talent, Chad, I think, in Major League Baseball that has got me excited. I know people look at Aaron Judge, but you look at Mike Trout, you look at Francisco Lindor, you look at Carlos Correa, you look at Cody Bellinger. These guys are all 25 years old or younger. And you could also go a little bit further. Manny Machado. You can look at guys like Mike Trout. I mean, Mike Trout's the best player in the game, right? He's already been an MVP twice. He's been a runner-up 3 times in 5 years, and yet not many people are talking about him, obviously because he's injured. I think baseball is in a great place right now because of the young players that are taking over the game. How excited are you about the way baseball is being presented today?
Well, I think it's as enjoyable as ever, and we talk a lot about, that's where the money is. Because there is no salary cap, these players can get huge deals, and we've seen money go up in the NBA, we've seen it go up in other sports, the cap has risen in the NHL and a few other places, but in baseball, it's no holds bar, and that's where the biggest salaries are, and that's why you always hear people telling their kids, or you see a kid who's a good athlete at a young age, you say, you better have him play baseball, you better have him play outfield, teach him how to hit lefty and things like that, and it's a cliche, and I wonder if we're actually at the stage now where we're seeing a generation of players whose parents were smart enough to have them play baseball, given injury risk, concussion risk in other sports and things like that. I think it's as fun as ever that some of the best athletes in the world are choosing that sport, where in the past it had always been kind of basketball, football binary.
Well, are they athletes or just really good baseball players? Like, there are certain guys. Bryce Harper, I think, is an athlete. I don't want to take anything away from baseball players because you know how much I love the game as well. But to say that the great athletes, I don't know if they're still necessarily going and gravitating toward the game of baseball.
No, if Cody Bellinger had a body like Bartolo Colon, or Mike Trout wasn't the best athlete in the game and things like that, and can do the things he does, then I would agree with you. But these are all young guys, they're generally fit guys, and part of their game is speed, whether it's on defense or on offense on the base paths. A lot of these guys, speed is a big component of their game plan, and that lends itself to the athleticism that I was describing.
All right, here's part of my problem, though, and I get this sense from talking with a lot of young players in the game today. And I've already told you some of the young guys that I really look forward to watching, okay? Even guys like Mookie Betts, okay, George Springer who makes his first All-Star appearance, Justin Smoke, for example. I don't think they're the future of the game per se, but I do believe it's enticing to me that 15 American leaguers, including Michael Fulmer, are headed to their first ever All-Star game. But I don't know if they truly appreciate the history of the game yet. It's something I've always respected about the game of hockey, that they truly respect the guys who came before them. And I think a lot of guys in a lot of different sports do. However, in this baseball day and age, I'm not sure many care to take the time to reflect back. I was at the Alex Faedo press conference the other day. Alex Faedo, in case people don't know, was the Tigers' first-round pick. He was chosen 18th overall. He's out of the University of Florida as a junior. He led that team to its first-ever national championship in 103 years. He led the nation in strikeouts, and he was the College World Series most outstanding player. He's up there taking pictures with his father, with his mother, with his brothers, and I think that's all good. Al Kaline goes up there, and he doesn't know who Al Kaline is. That's a bit of an issue. Now, he knew about the English D. He knew about some of the great pitchers of the past. Primarily Justin Verlander comes to mind. And granted, he's a young kid. He's only 20 years old. But at some point, these guys got to do a better job of reflecting back and understanding the great players who came before them. You and I talked about it on one of our recent podcasts. And I still think, as a matter of fact, I went to some of the Tiger coaches and told them about your idea. They could not get over how excited they were about your hologram idea. You know, where a guy might run Billy Hamilton first to third on a guy like Dave Winfield or Dave Parker or Jesse Barfield or Dwight Evans. The problem is there's not enough people who recognize some of the great players of the past. And this leads me to believe that my generation is better than this generation. And I don't want to sound like old guy here, but I still believe the great players of my generation, okay, Robin Yount, for example, whether it be Alan Trammell, Ozzie Smith, Cal Ripken, Mike Schmidt, George Brett, I can go on and on and on, are better than the players today. And a lot of it not just because of how great they were, but also because of the appreciation they had of the past.
Well, that's your decision to evaluate them and take their ability to appreciate the past even into consideration. A lot of people would say, I could give a crap if he can identify a player from the past as long as he's hitting home runs now or winning games now. That's an argument that's tough to have, and it's not one that you can really fairly have or ever have logically.
Unless you've seen them. I've seen them. I saw.
You
Lou
don't
Whitaker
think you
play.
have any
saw
sort of?
Eddie
You don't
Murray
think
play.
there's any bias there from
Absolutely,
your era?
there's
You have
bias.
nostalgia and romanticism.
No question. There's no question. There's bias.
Well,
Just
as long
like,
as you admit that, then I
Yeah.
can not take your evaluation at face value.
Well, no, but that doesn't mean that I'm asking you to come to a conclusion. There might be a slight bias in something. That doesn't mean that I can't appreciate what today. That's why I set it up the way I did and told you about the players who I really enjoy watching today. And it's not, the difference isn't because these guys don't appreciate it as much as the players who I watched and grew up idolizing. It's because of an honest evaluation that I have. I think we're all biased to a certain extent. We all have to admit that.
No, I would agree, but I think that the education of these players, part of it's the technology and the way they grew up, and the guys that are in their 20s now don't have the same distractions that guys are growing up at this current time do or will face in the future as far as technology and just ways to captivate your attention. But I think I may have seen this from another team, and it might have been an NFL team as well, but guys that brought their rookies in for their rookie symposium and taught them some of that history, some of that franchise history, and maybe that's an opportunity for teams to do this in the future in the MLB because it is such a history-rich sport. And we talk about going out to Comerica Park and you look at the Legends Wall and you see the statues and explaining to someone who doesn't know why there's no number next to Ty Cobb's name and things like that.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that should be appreciated by these draft picks. Now, I'm going to give Alex Faedo a pass because he's been on a bit of a whirlwind with the College World Series. I'm sure he was rushed right up here and kind of thrown into the middle of things. The difference is, for him, it might be reading the Tigers Wikipedia page on his airplane or on his ride over from the airport or something like that, whereas in the past, it'd be an education that you kind of grew up with. But there's so many different things that are asking for people's attention these days that it's a difficult thing to ask him to have all of that information.
Yeah, look, I'm not asking him to recognize Travis Fryman walking down the hallways. I'm asking him to recognize the great players of all time. You had mentioned the statues. There's 6 statues in left center field. Al Kaline's one of them. So that's all I'm wondering a little bit. And look, that's not a knock on the kid. It's more of a knock on a generation or what's going on today. You teach me this all the time when we talk. You've got the opportunity for information at your fingertips. Information, like Newman in Seinfeld. You got all that right there at your fingertips, and you don't know who certain guys are or the guys who came before him. Look, you can say what you want about Bryce Harper. He's a little bit of a red ass, but the bottom line is Bryce Harper does know the past. He does appreciate a lot of the guys who have come before him and made it happen. Who are the young guys?
That endears him to guys like you, but maybe somebody else being ambivalent towards that kind of thing, maybe that brings in a baseball fan who's a little bit more casual. And I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other. Like you, I appreciate a lot of that past, and I would like for my players to appreciate that past too, but it's less of a prerequisite now, and I think what really matters is their peers. Do their peers care about that? And that's the kind of the evaluation that matters more than the rest.
Yeah, let me reiterate. This isn't the reason I think that past players were better than today. Everybody talks about bigger, stronger, faster, more information, and so on and so forth. I just look at the way certain guys went about their business and the numbers that they put up and the clutch performances that they had on a regular basis. Give me the young guys right now, and they don't even have to be young, but give me the guys who you look at, say, could be revolutionary players, guys who long time from now, when you're talking to your kids, 20 years from now, you're going to look back and you're going to say, you know what? I remember when that dude was playing, he was unbelievable. Like I just mentioned some of the names that I did.
Is baseball specific, you think, or you're kind of trying to take it out to a couple different places? Well, I think Nolan Arenado is where I would start that list out in Colorado.
26,
his
right?
defense is incredible. He
got 4 Gold Gloves.
He rakes, and he might be the main reason, if not the reason, why Colorado's in the position it's in, especially given the struggles of Carlos Gonzalez, the inability of the big signing Ian Desmond to stay healthy. Their pitching obviously has had some up and downs in that ballpark, but they're better at home than they are on the road.
Okay,
I think.
Do you think that ballpark takes something away from his numbers?
From Arenado's?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I would not say that, but he's one of the guys.
Larry Walker. That's the reason I bring it up.
Well, he's one of the guys that I would include in that list. There's certainly some overlap in what you talked about. Manny Machado is fantastic. I love watching his glove.
Year. I think he's been about 215 this year.
But he is one of those guys that you're going to talk about in the future, especially, I believe.
Yeah.
Mike Trout obviously falls in that list. And I like Carlos Correa a lot in Houston. I think the way they built their team up the middle with the strength of him and Altuve turning the double plays and being able to hit in the middle of their lineup, he's still got a lot of really good baseball ahead of him. But we're not devoid of that young talent in the AL Central either. Miguel Sano we're going to see in the home run derby coming up. Francisco Lindor.
You like Miguel Sano.
I think he hits the piss off the ball.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything special about him. He can hit the ball. Guess what? Greg Luzinski could hit the ball too with Philadelphia.
You'd be around a long time if you can hit the ball.
Yeah, I know, but I don't. He's not a complete player to me, I guess. The guys you brought up before, I think, are really good examples.
How much worse a glove does Miguel Sano have than Miguel Cabrera? And now I know he hasn't done it for 10 or 12 years like Miguel Cabrera, but if all Miguel Cabrera brings is a bat, then why are you going to knock Miguel Sano for all he brings is a bat?
Okay, hold on. That's not all
he adds to a lineup.
That's not all Miguel Cabrera brings. He used to be a third baseman, and I know so did Sano. Of course, Sano's played right field, too.
I don't think he ever...
To Benny Hill music, for crying out loud. But Miguel Cabrera is a better fielding first baseman. He's never going to be considered for a Gold Glove. Don't bring Miguel Sano and Miguel Cabrera into the same conversation because it's a bad argument.
Well, you can't argue that a guy's not a complete player if you're not going to penalize other people for not being complete players.
Because I don't think Cabrera needs to be penalized. He's actually a decent glove. He's not a great glove, but he's a decent glove. He's not Eric Hosmer over there, so don't get me wrong. He's not the second coming of Kent Herbeck back in the day. I'm just telling you, him and Miguel Sano are a little different. You like him a lot. I don't. There's nothing that moves the needle for Miguel Sano for me. All the other names that you brought up, I think, are really good examples. I'm just not sure about Sano. It does lead us into a different conversation regarding the Tigers, though. The Tigers don't have anybody. Outside of Michael Fulmer, I want you to think about this. Outside of Michael Fulmer, who's the guy on this team that you look forward to seeing grow within their system?
Yeah, they don't really have that guy. They don't have
anybody.
Now. And we've talked about their lack of depth in terms of position prospects. They have a decent amount of arms in their system. It's not a great amount. It's not if they needed to go buy a big starting pitcher, I don't think they'd have the assets to do that and not be completely barren afterwards.
No way.
But the depth at pitching is better than it was a couple of years ago, and there is a little bit of something there. There's almost no organizational depth in terms of position players in the minor leagues.
Outside of outfield, okay? Outside of Michael Gerber.
A couple of young outfielders who can hit.
Right. We
Christian Stewart, guys like that.
Christian Stewart, Derek Hill, Michael Gerber are supposed to make up that outfield that we eventually could see as being, the young and the guys who are going to stay together for a long time.
Yeah.
If you're expecting Nick Castellanos and Jose Iglesias to stay together and then Dixon Machado and eventually move Miguel Cabrera to the DH role and put somebody else at first base, I don't know who that may be, and James McCann behind the plate, this team's going to go through a long, extended period of struggling baseball.
I think you're right. They're exposed to that reality, and this deadline that's looming presents an opportunity to cut that, to chop that at the root, or to circumnavigate that as best you can, I think. And that's why it's important for the Tigers to get not just a haul or a set of prospects back, but the right guys back.
Right.
And you don't want a guy who's playing high single A right now. Maybe a pitcher, you want an arm like that, but you don't want a future second baseman or third baseman who's playing high single A. You want someone who can help you sooner. And I don't know, enough about the rest of these teams' farm systems to take a stab at what kind of return they'll actually get.
That's what David Chad and those guys get paid to do.
And I have to imagine that the reports that are out there right now, mainly from Buster Olney, that the Tigers have a high asking price on Verlander and things like that, are for that reason, because they can't afford to just get rid of these guys and not get the return that's necessary to bolster this lull that they're in.
Remember this. We're also talking in early July. By the time it gets to July 31st, I was talking with somebody about this the other day. By the time it gets to July 25th, will the asking price, the demand, and the unwillingness to pay any of a guy like Verlander's contract still be so etched in stone for the Tigers that they won't move like they said back on July 5th? I'm not sure that's going to be the case. I'm sure things might change a little bit. Verlander's contract, actually, I think is just for a couple of more years.
Yeah, I think it's up in 2019.
Okay, so 2019. I still think, and I've said this before on this podcast, Justin Wilson and Alex Avila are going to bring you the most. Justin Wilson is probably destined for Washington. Washington feels like the Cubs are on a down year. We got a chance to go to the World Series. We have one of the best players in baseball in Bryce Harper. We've got all-stars in terms of Ryan Zimmerman as well, and our second baseman as well as an all-star. So, David Murphy, you got a chance with the back end of a bullpen, knowing that Strasburg's good and Scherzer's good and they got the starting pitching. If we could just get a closer. They haven't had a closer all year long, and look at how good they've been. Justin Wilson is lights-out stuff. I bet you, this was my belief, I think Detroit was showcasing Wilson even that much more the other day against the Giants when they wrapped up the series win against them on Thursday. It was a no-save situation. Justin Wilson and Alex Wilson were both warming up. There's a part of me that believes, even though Brad Ausmus told me afterward, look, I'm warming him up, I'm going to use him, there's a part of me that believes I'm going to show again just how lights out this guy is, and he was. He attacks hitters, he throws 96 to 98 miles per hour, he's got the closing mentality, he's got the numbers right now, he's going to bring a ton from Washington, and I think with Alex Avila, his walk rate is the best on the Tigers, his eye is one of the best in all of baseball. He doesn't swing at anything outside the zone. He's a disciplined hitter. He works the staff well. He throws runners out very well. I think those two guys are going to bring more for Detroit than just about anybody else. Because with Verlander, it's going to be a really difficult sell based on the $28 million he's making next year, the $28 million he's making the following season, and knowing the Tigers are going to not want to take any of that money on, and they're going to want a slew of people in return.
Well, I don't disagree with you on Justin Wilson because his value, I think, is as high as it can be just about in terms of what he's done since he's been in a Tigers uniform. But I wouldn't rule out the possibility that Verlander brings in the biggest return. I think that you have to consider, again, something we've talked about repeatedly on this podcast, what role they're asking him to play. Justin Wilson's going to have an important role for whoever he ends up pitching for in the postseason, but he might not be their only bullpen guy. And
if it were Washington, you're right. If it were Washington, it would be.
Chicago needs Justin Verlander to come in and be an ace. They don't need Justin Verlander to come in and start Game 4, maybe not even get a start in the CS and then come out and help in relief in the World Series, pitch 4 2/3 or something like that. They need him to come out and be the guy that's thrown 100-plus career postseason innings for the Tigers. To be the guy that was an MVP a couple of years back and a Cy Young winner and a Cy Young runner-up last year. That's the guy that they're trying to buy, and that's why they're sending scouts to just about every one of his starts right now.
Well, that's a really good point. It depends on the team that he's going to. I would tell you this, though. If you're going to the Dodgers don't need him to be the ace.
Sure.
Okay? That's Clayton Kershaw. Alex Wood has had an unbelievable season. You're right. If Verlander were to go to a team like the Cubs, Jake Arrieta, John Lester, those are the guys that are currently their top guys,
I think Verlander would prefer that situation, knowing him to be the competitor that he is, to come in and have more on his shoulders versus being another piece in Houston, another piece in L.A. And I'm not saying he would begrudge those situations or not approve a trade to one of those teams. I just think that's the situation he might have his eye on it as, yes, let me come in there and be that guy and help them take the next step.
That's interesting because I think L.A. is where he would have his eye on, and the reason is he just bought a house in Beverly Hills. So I think that's the big reason that he would love to go out there, live there, know that his fiance, Kate Upton, is going to be there, and that's where they make their home. And I think where he bought his house is like 15 minutes away from Dodger Stadium. So I think that would be. But look,
that might be coincidental and speculative.
Well, it is speculative, just like it would be speculative for you to say that he wants to go to the Cubs and he wants to have more on his plate. He's still going to be. If he goes to the Dodgers, it's not like they're going to say, okay, we could just afford a bad start for him too. They need someone to alleviate innings from Clayton Kershaw, and I think that's the reason that it's going to be really tough with Justin Verlander. He has not been that guy this year that has towed the rubber for an extended period of time in games. He's had some struggles in that regard because more and more teams are fouling him off. So
that's a good point. That's a good point. You're right. I mean, there's a reason why his value is what it is. He's got the highest ERA of his career. He's not going as deep into games as we talked about. He's getting hit hard sometimes. So my hope is that he can have a good start or two, maybe after the All-Star break if he's around for that long, and that the asking price could even go up a little bit. But I still believe he can bring probably the biggest single return of any one guy, especially given that control extends for 3 more years. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Justin Wilson is a free agent after next year. So an additional year of control, granted you're paying for it, but I think those are some of the things that might leverage where Verlander could actually bring a bigger return. Although, as I said before, I'm not going to disagree with you as to the value of Justin Wilson because he's as good a bullpen piece out there at the deadline as there is.
All right, before we leave, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball, and we're brought to you by Fifth Avenue and by Northwestern Tech here on Shep Shower and Shave. The Pistons made a move today. Marcus Morris was traded to Boston for Avery Bradley. Now, just yesterday, the Pistons made the decision, or late last week, I should say, Thursday, the Pistons made the decision, finalized the deal with Langston Galloway coming here as a free agent, 3 years, $21 million, so $7 million per season. He's a combo guard. Avery Bradley is a combo guard. Avery Bradley averaged 16 points and 6 boards for Boston a year ago. He's going to have 1 year left on his contract. He's a good defensive player as well. I would have preferred Marcus Smart personally. Boston had to move somebody in order to free up some cap room and make it official with Gordon Hayward. Do you like this move by Stan Van Gundy and the Pistons? Now, Marcus Morris, remember, when he came here, he's a Philadelphia guy. He's a guy who bragged about being tough. He bragged about being a leader, wanted to be a leader. Stan Van Gundy thought he was a bit of a leader. I thought he was a bench player. I thought he would have been much better coming off the bench for the Pistons instead of starting. I thought Tobias Harris was the better player, and I think what you do now is you make a decision on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Caldwell-Pope, if he decides to leave, you've got a guy like Bradley, a guy like Galloway who can play the 2 guard. I think it frees up some minutes for Stanley Johnson with Marcus Morris being sent off. And maybe, just deep down inside, depending on what Bradley does, and he's only 26, okay, depending on what happens with Avery Bradley, if you want to bring him back, you might be able to trade Reggie Jackson. What did you think about the move, Marcus Morris to Boston for Avery Bradley? I like it.
I do like it. I agree with you that it creates a little bit more flexibility for the Pistons front office and coaching staff in terms of making this KCP decision. We've seen some of the ridiculous deals, some of the money that's been put out there. When players like Otto Porter are signing max deals.
God, did you see that?
It's unbelievable to me. But, it is what it is, and the market pays what it's going to pay. I think for the Pistons, it's good that they get a two-way player, and that's something you mentioned. He's a 2-time all-defensive team player, I believe, a guy who averaged 16 and 6 last year and shot 40% from 3. Stan Van Gundy likes guys that play both ends of the floor, and I think what you mentioned with Stanley Johnson is a huge component of this. Moving on for Marcus Morris says that the Pistons front office is ready to see Stanley Johnson embrace that bigger role. I think that's something Pistons fans were looking for last year, and with the exciting play of Henry Ellenson in the Summer League, there's a couple pieces now that the Pistons could actually have some positive outlook on looking into this next season. I'm curious to see if, with 1 year left on the deal, if the Pistons are eager to extend Bradley or if they want to give him a bit of a trial right away. Because like I said, he seems like a good fit for Van Gundy, and if he's not going to be a guy who's going to steal minutes from the people you need to develop, then I'm all for it.
It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, because there are certain teams, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, for example, who are interested in his services. It by all accounts, it looks like he might be a max guy, close to $25 million a year. And I like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, first and foremost. I do. I like him. He is not worth that money. Avery Bradley comes in. You get an opportunity to shift him point or two. You got Luke Kennard coming off your bench a little bit. I think this is a positive move for Detroit. I would love to see a refresher in that backcourt. I would love to see what Reggie Jackson may fetch. And by the way, Detroit also got a second-round pick. Not that that matters a whole lot, but I think this move by Stan Van Gundy is a really sound one.
Well, it's as interesting as anything else we've talked about, and the cliche keeps repeating itself of how valuable a guy is to that team, not just across the league. The value is not uniform, and we saw Tim Hardaway sign a massive extension with the Knicks.
Good for him.
That's great. Not many people think the Hawks are going to match that. He means more to the Knicks, given that front office, than what he would have meant to the Hawks based on what they can afford. Now, there's finances involved. I'm not saying the Hawks don't value him. Obviously, he was a big part of their playoff run last year and the great second half that they had. But this is something we're going to see across the landscape. It's with Matt Stafford with the Lions. It's with KCP and the Pistons, and it's with other people like that. And you got to understand that this team is going to pay what they perceive the value to be of that player. And only time is going to tell if these deals are actually good.
Quite honestly, I thought Tim Hardaway, and just so people know, Tim Hardaway signed for 4 years, $71 million. He's 25. He's really good. He's been outstanding for Atlanta. He averaged over 14 and a half points per game in 28 minutes per game. It was a breakout year for them. He was one of their more consistent players. They're going to miss him. I thought he would have been a dynamite fit for the Pistons, but I do like the Bradley signing. Shep Shower and Shave brought to you by Northwestern Tech, by Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak, and by Nate Knopf. He's the one who did our logo. You can see his work. Nate at goldwellstudios.com. See his work on Instagram or on Facebook.